So even the Salaf, even the first two generations, there were different opinions. Some people thought the earth was flat. Others came along and they said, the earth is round. There were people, in the first two generations of Islam.
Right, that means between AD 632, the death of Muhammad, and about AD 832. So within those 200 years,
because
that's you said. So you said two generations. So I thought you said 2 centuries. 2 generations. That'll be within from 632 to say 750.
The Prophet.
Yeah.
He had colleagues who he would differ with. Some would say the earth is round. Some would say the earth is flat. They would differ, but even then they would differ.
Yeah, but you see, you're quoting from Hadith, which are written in the 9th century.
Oh, come on. No, that's not true, you see.
Okay.
They weren't written in the 9th century.
When were they written?
Because you have to understand.
Whose collection are they in?
They're in Bukhari and they're in Muslim. But
And they lived when?
wait, let me finish. They lived 200 years before. But the problem with your understanding of it is you assume that these are just rumours around the street. And if 300 years later someone says, you know what guys, let's just start collecting. That's
Okay.
what actually happened.
Okay.
Actually happened was there were collections from the very beginning. And if you read Bukhari and Muslim, they're constantly referencing all these books and that book actually existed, which people used to do inside the mosques. But it's that Bukhari and Muslim were the only authoritative ones that survived. So even now, let me bring up a collection, a hadith collection from 8 years after Hijrah. 8 years after Hijrah.
8 years.
8 years after Hijrah.
Right. So 630 AD. Go on. I'm going to wait. This is fantastic. No. So 8 years after Hijrah is 630 AD.
8 years after Hijrah.
Hijrah is 622, right?
621,
80. Right.
So it began, and even that.
Okay. So around 700 AD.
Yes, I'll bring it up. I'm on the website now. I'll bring it up on the
That's okay. I've got all day.
They're giving you the same free Quran as me.
Oh yeah. No, I actually picked it up in some bookshelf somewhere near us.
Okay, this is the one they gave me.
Yeah, it's excellent for carrying around,
Oh, yeah.
and it's favoured by many Muslims. Sahih.
Do you know the Sahifa Hammam ibn Munabbih?
Sorry.
The Sahifa Hammam ibn Munabbih.
What about it?
So this book was written 100 years after the Prophet's death, 8 years after
Right.
Hijrah. And that's, well, let me finish. That's a hadith connection. So look, this is the
So
article.
we've got
I
this-
can send it to you. It's called Islamic Awareness website.
Okay.
Islamic Awareness.
So
you
we've got this then. We've got.
You've misunderstood fundamentally the whole issue of hadith collection. There were always hadith collections, even before Bukhari and
But I'm asking you, have we got hadith collections apart from the Muwatta,
Yeah.
which is allegedly an accurate copy of the Muwatta itself of Malik, which may not be the case. Some say it's not. But apart from that, you're saying, is there a hadith collection in existence which we can go to, as I can go to Bukhari? Because I've got lots of hadith collections, and that one you've mentioned is not in the ones I've got, and therefore I wonder why.
No, the thing is, the copies obviously are not available because, for example, if you're reading in classical antiquity, Horace referenced the book, and there's 10 other authors who reference his books, and they all say, I cited from here. That proves beyond that book is existence. It was in existence at the time. It was known. It was being taught. But guess what? Just because that book hasn't survived doesn't mean
Okay,
it
right.
existed.
So what we've got then are the collections from the 9th century and references to other earlier collections. All right. Now then, in a particular hadith, your religion depends for the authenticity of a hadith upon a chain of narration that is valid, right?
Yeah,
So what you have to do is to give me the chain of narration for these hadith.
they're there.
And that
in the books.
Now, just before you go on, the chain of narration gives you authentic, good memorizers of good character.
Yeah.
The biographies of those memorizers, which tell you what they were like, are written even later.
That's not true though, because the earliest collection of Ilm al-Rijal was written 100 years after Hijrah as well.
But you're saying this to me again without a copy in existence.
No, but look, again, let's use the classical antiquity example. These books were known at the time. There were references between the scholars who themselves were authenticating these things. And just because it hasn't survived now doesn't mean that it never existed.
There are vast numbers of hadith that have been made up. Therefore, well, no, you know that because Bukhari said that, right?
I know.
This is not controversial.
Exactly.
What it means is, one cannot take the fact that somebody says such and such hadith existed back in the 7th century. You've got to really have hard evidence.
Can I say a final thing? The thing is, some not experts, but I have a layman's reading of it. But what they say is that when they reference a book, they don't just say, oh, by the way, as so-and-so said. They say, and heaven, from so-and-so, from so-and-so. In that book, if you read the work of Jonathan Brown, he's a scholar.
Yeah, I've got his hadith book, I've read it.
Not just him, but these Islamic
But Jonathan, okay, you know Jonathan Brown, he says near the end of his book that the legal hadith are more trustworthy than the non-legal hadith, and the non-legal hadith to do with eschatology, the life of the Prophet, are extremely unreliable. You read Jonathan Brown then, his book Hadith.
No, what he says is that when it comes to fiqh, which is stuff that actually talks about how Muslims should live their life, they had a much higher burden of proof in terms of accepting it.
Yeah.
When it came to things like the character of the Prophet, or all that, for example, they say, he gave charity to this person, or someone came to Sahabi and they said, sleep in my house and be my guest. They took a much more relaxed approach to that type of thing, not because they wanted liars, but because they didn't see the point of...
Yeah, it wasn't their priority. But he knows, he says effectively it's a pity that they were like that, but the fact is that's the way they were. So the hadith we've got, we cannot just say, oh yeah, that's okay. Brown, one of your guys, is saying there's serious problems with the hadith collection.
That's very different. He says that they didn't treat like it was a criminal court. The burden of proof was slightly lower. Doesn't mean
slightly. No, he says there's a huge problem with the collection of hadith relating to matters like eschatology, the life of the Prophet, and so on. It's in the legal section, not just eschatology.
I don't take eschatology particularly because there's obviously stuff in there that a lot of Muslims took a relaxed approach, and it's understandable because these aren't creedal issues.
The eschatology is extremely important. How are you to know what the last things are about?